Welcome to Owen and Brew's Barbecue. Today, we are on the run like the Bad Batch, and so we're only serving up some stolen fruit. Today, I'm joined by Nick, myself, my name's Matt, no other special guests today.
Well, I didn't know you were actually going to say stolen fruit.
No, legit. Like, that was what I was thinking. Like, we are on the run. We're eating stolen fruit. We're eating what the Bad Batch eats.
I thought you were going to be like, we're doing some grilled fruit, or like some kind of,
you mean like a
dried, kebab, or like, we're going for some hydrated, whatever that was. But I was like, I just guessed, like, oh, stolen fruit. And you're like, what?
Yeah, it's actually legit in my notes here. So if you could see.
Stolen fruit.
So, and speeder chase. Like, what else is there to talk about? So, spoilers ahead for The Bad Batch, Episode 4. We're talking about Cornered. And if they feel cornered, so do Nick and myself. So, Jay and Chris, they only show up every now and then. So, Nick, what did you think of this episode?
They keep getting shorter and shorter,
Yeah.
But at first, when I read the description of the episode, I went, "Oh, this is gonna be a filler episode," because it just said like the gang run into a problem when they are out looking for supplies. I'm like, "Oh, okay, so this is like the pilot of Rebels, or something." Like it's just, but then I was surprised. I was like, "Okay, it wasn't as bad as I thought it was gonna be." So I mean, I give it out of 10 like a 6. It's not a bad episode, but it's not a great episode.
Yeah. Speaking of the first episode of Rebels, we got stolen fruit and a speeder chase, so
exactly.
pretty close there.
Yeah.
So, I liked it. I mean, I do think I kind of wonder, like, okay, if this is following the Mandalorian, so the first half of this season is going to be them bouncing around the galaxy, meeting, different people, and getting, kind of collecting their crew essentially. And then the payoff, and you've convinced me. I'm a convert here. I'm a Nick, conspiracy theorist convert here. I don't want to get too hung up on it, because then if it doesn't deliver somewhere else, I'm gonna be like, "Come on, Nick, you ruined the show for me." Yeah. But I do like the idea of like there being a war on Kamino, or Kamino coming up as a central piece. If we think about them as a unit, or what would have been their home, I mean, it's established in Clone Wars. They talk about it as though very fondly. I mean, this is their Tatooine. So why wouldn't there be some type of altercation, whether it's in this season or...
It might not be this season. I think it's going to happen, though. I think that's going to be a culmination of so many things, is the Battle of Kamino. I just know it.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't mind it. I probably liked it better than I liked it better than probably Chris liked it. Chris hasn't said anything, so we can assume that
he might not have watched it yet either.
So
but
that's true.
I just felt it was very straightforward. I mean, seeing Fennec was a nice surprise. That's what saved the episode to me.
Sure.
But it was very just like, oh, we're here to get supplies. Like, oh, we come into a problem here. There was nothing other than just a linear type typical episode of like, oh, we get this and then we leave. I was like, okay, there's not really much going on here.
Right. I mean, we did get the fun part with Echo being a droid. So this is the first time that Echo gets like some substance of like a storyline, which I thought was fun. And him like having an android hand really
that was neat. That. Yeah, so, I agree. I like that.
Echo has a special place in my heart for that. And I liked the fact that he kind of frees the droids too. He takes them off, and we get a really weird, like, gray line of slavery here. Like, he sells him, and gray line of stealing too, because essentially, like, they're kind of robbing.
Yeah, I wondered if people caught on to that, because it's kind of very subtle, and then when the robot's like, when the main droid's like, we can't leave, we have restrictor bolts, and then you see him just very subtly hand the owner all the restrictor bolts.
Yeah,
the bolts, and and then at the end, if you didn't catch that,
Mm-hmm.
And when he said, okay, now you're back in charge again, you could assume they're like, oh, we'll just go back now to the shop owner. But they're free, so they can do whatever they want, you know?
Yeah. And I like the one little droid that looks like, I don't know, he looks like 100 different sci-fi robots that we've seen in pop culture since like the 1950s, right? Like the accordion arms. Like, it looks like you could build this droid out of parts at a Lowe's, and I just love that little droid.
The one thing I've never understood about droids, period, is that in a world where pretty much every other droid speaks English, why did they make those droids, you know, Astromechs and the little ones, all just beat? It's like you're still giving them some kind of vocal function. So, like, why would you not have them speak? And, you know,
I feel like my phone speaks to me more than droids. So, you know, I mean, if you think about like R2-D2, it's like, dude, you're more powerful than a cell phone, and yet you can't talk.
Yeah.
You can't say another word. You can holo project, but, you know, ours is not to dissect why they're created this way. You know, maybe it's like
interesting. And it's things like that
old tech versus new tech. You know, like they built them to last back in the day.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Hard for them to snitch. Like, there's so many just random things that pop in my head when I watch Star Wars. It's like, wait a minute. So you're telling me that any droid, as long as they have one of those little screwdrivers things, can hack into any system throughout the universe? It's like, this is just bad cybersecurity. The fact that this droid from nowhere can go into, you know, Bespin and just like, oh, I'm going to override the security system. It's like, what kind of world are we living in here? This is crazy.
My son wants to know where do they just have the same wardrobe, or do they do their laundry, and where do they do their laundry? I mean, I guess we saw a little bit at the end of Clone Wars where we did see a laundromat. That was like the first time that we ever saw clothes being cleaned. But man, if it's only on Coruscant and, you know, level 1313, come on, like it ships the Falcon. Does it have a washer and dryer?
Yeah, it has to. That's what, you know, I think we've talked about this. That's one of the things that a lot of people don't notice, and I think we've talked about this before, that at the very end of Empire Strikes Back, you know, you see Lando wearing the blue cape and his clothes, and then as soon as he's on the Falcon, he's wearing Han's clothes. You're like, what the hell? Why are you wearing Han's clothes?
I think that it is one of the biggest mysteries of, like, he's just like, oh, I'm here now, so I'm the new Han? Like, it's a weird moment, especially, I don't know, maybe it's because it was made in 1980, but it feels like one of those divorced stepdad moments where you're like, you're not my dad. You're never going to be my dad. I don't care if you're wearing his clothes. Sorry, I'm probably reading too much into that.
It was just little things you notice. You're just kind of like, that's weird. Like, why is he doing that?
One thing my daughter pointed out was she thinks Fennec was working for the cloners to actually track down the girl, because Fennec only had basically the bounty for her, not the others.
Could be. You only need one.
You only need one, and I'm not sure. I mean, they obviously, like, they let her go, but I don't know. Like, it's kind of odd that she had the holo of Omega or Omega, however you prefer. It's kind of like GIF or GIF at this point. I feel like because she calls herself Omega, you know, you can call her Omega, but everybody else is going to call her Omega.
Right.
No,
I don't know. That's you know, the $1 million question at the very end of the episode of, like, okay, who hired her? Because, you know, the outlandish part of my brain wants it to be like Darth Maul or somebody, but I don't think that is. I think it's either what you're saying. It's either the cloners to either move some pieces on the puzzle. I mean, move the pieces on the board to get them to go somewhere they want to control the environment, or it's someone like Boba Fett who is still young at this point, and it would establish some kind of relationship later on in The Mandalorian to why he would save her, you know. I mean, that's another one that could be there because you saw that in Clone Wars how he had a little ring there of bounty hunters, people like Bosk and other people that he worked with, and she could easily be in that ring of like, oh, here's a little side mission, go ahead,
They did a great job of setting up why she's such a BA, right? I mean, we already kind of knew that Fennec can hold her own, but seeing her go up against Wrecker, which I mean.
Yeah,
it's kind of embarrassing, but she used all counterweight, measures that she was using on him. And I got the feeling that Hunter is like, he's still doing that new dad thing where he's just like, he's at the store and your kid's playing with something. Don't touch that. You're going to break. I'm trying to get $5 out of this stupid landmine so we can get off this rock and you're.
Well, man, that was such a stereotypical plot line of like, oh, something distracts the kid and they run away, and you want to be like, in that moment, when he yelled at her for almost dying in the second episode, he overstepped a little bit, but it's understandable. This one is totally justifiable for him to shake the crap out of her, because it would have been one of those like, do you not know we're wanted? Do you not know that we're like, I'm trying to put food in your mouth, and what do? You run off, like it just. I would have lost it,
and she runs off because she sees a creature.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that creature is actually in Resistance.
Who is it? Okay.
Yeah, it's named Buggles.
It just looked like a fat pug to me. I was like,
okay. And it's called a the species is called a Vorpak or Vorpak, Vorpak, or I don't know. I think that's how it's pronounced. But anyway, if you've watched Resistance, Buggles is in it. It's kind of cute. Buggles, of course, gets into trouble like most dogs do on any cartoon show. So expect the unexpected. It's interesting to get these little nuggets where they're trying to pull in Resistance because there's been a couple other species that have popped up. And we get the voice of Bobby Moynihan, one of the voice actors, not only in Resistance but now carrying over into Clone Wars, or not Clone Wars. I'm sorry, Bad Batch. So I'm kind of excited to hear his voice. I hope he gets more work because he has such a cool, funny voice. Every time I hear it, it makes me laugh or kind of like I'm like, oh yeah. So
what voice was he in this episode?
I'm trying to remember who he is in this one. I'd have to look it up on IMDb again, but he is almost there. He plays Citizen Number 2.
Oh, it could be anybody.
It could be. He plays a specific character in Resistance. It's kind of a blink if you miss it. Appears a little bit more, I think, or has a little bit more story in the second season. But hopefully he'll have a reoccurring character. It'd be nice. So,
since we're at this point in the stories, the one thing that just irked me in this episode was that the reason why she chases the dog is because it grabs her little doll of the clone trooper. Like, so she's really invested in it.
Right.
And then so she's chasing it, and then you see the dog clearly throw the clone trooper doll, and she sees it land, and then she gets into an accident. She falls. She falls right on top of it. and then, of course, Fennec finds her, and then when they get up to leave, she just leaves the doll there. And, of course, I'm like, okay, I get it, because it's like a breadcrumb for Hunter to find her. I knew that was going to happen, but still, it's like, you wouldn't fall on your doll. You wouldn't chase your doll this whole way just to leave it there. Like, it just like, but I get it. I get it. You had to have that plot point in there.
It's fair. It's fair. I will say that the chase sequence is really fun.
Yeah.
I like that was pretty much the high point of the episode. And a little bit of Attack of the Clones in there, just like with the helmet style, because it's very much in the style.
It really was, yeah. Now I think about it, yeah. It was, yeah, very Attack of the Clones. And then, like, I even thought, like, when they first landed on the planet with the Portmaster, it's the opposite of Mandalorian. Whereas then she comes out to help him, and has the droids to fix it. He's all like, "Oh yeah, give me money."
Right. We also this planet, and did you write down the planet?
Yes, the one they went to?
Yeah.
Pantora.
Pantora, thank you.
So they wanted to go to, where do I have it? Ida Floor, which is an uninhabited planet. But Tech smartly points out that they have no food, fuel, and they also need to scramble their signature. So they need to find a port to do that. And so it's like, okay, so that's what they do. And I had a couple of questions. I think I already addressed most of them. But you see Omega, saying because she wants to go on adventures, and she kind of whines when she's like, "Go into hiding," but I've been on one planet my whole life, and
I don't want to go into quarantine. Shut up, kid. We know.
It made me think though about her age, because the clones are really only about 10 years old. Which they're 20, probably just over 20 years old now, physically, but mentally, they've only been around for 10 years because they aged twice the rate. And so that made me think about her. It's like, well, do you think that she was born the same time they were, but she doesn't have the growth enhancements? So she's roughly the same age as they are, or or was she bred later, and has the enhancements, to where she's.
I always assume that she's later because of the whole Omega thing being the last,
But I'm saying, if she was, then because she's probably 10 years old, 10 to 12 years old. So that's what I'm saying. So if she does have the growth enhancements, then. So that means that she's only a couple years old. So I think that's the debate. Is like, does she have the growth enhancement or does she not? Or was she bred roughly the same time they were, and then she just doesn't have the growth enhancement, so they're both 10. All of them are 10 roughly. But I don't know. It's just one of those puzzles you'll never see, because that's what really. But the things that you're never to really think about in Star Wars is like, if you're a Phase 1 clone, and you age at twice the rate, you're 4 years old, or you're 2 when the next batch is born. So you're always going to grow at twice the age. So it's like, that's something. Right now we've always seen clones all roughly look the same age, but in reality, you'd have it staggered to where like some would be much older than the one.
Some would be Well, the one thing I wanted to mention about Pantora though is that we've been to this planet, or we've seen Pantorans before. So
we have. Okay.
Yeah, in Clone Wars, the Clone Wars episode specifically, we see. I think it's one of the moons of Pantora because it's an ice world, but it's in that system.
Okay.
The planet that we land on, we don't see ice, but the one that we see, there's actually like a blue kind of girl that like.
Oh, I remember that. Yeah.
And then there's like. The one guy's like evil and he's trying to get the separatists involved, and we get some really cool snow speeder action with Anakin and Obi-Wan trying to negotiate the negotiations.
We see that character twice. Actually.
We do. We see her again. And then, of course, George Lucas makes a cameo as a Pantoran in Revenge of the Sith. So
he's green, though. Whereas the rest
No, he's blue.
Is he blue? Okay, I thought he was green. Okay. Yeah, because I noticed that on the planet, I was like, "Wow, they made a lot of them blue this episode." And then I was like, and then now that makes total sense when you say that. Like,
it's the Smurf planet.
Yeah, the Smurf.
Yeah. That was the only thing I was thinking of as far as like how this connects into the clone, because I see that with Bad Batch, how they're reaching for like things that we have seen in Clone Wars, and they're sprinkling in all of these other things.
That's what to me makes Star Wars interesting, is the interconnections. You don't have to hit us over the head with them, but like this little bitty Easter egg here references something that happened in another show. This little bitty thing, and if you get it, great. If you don't get it, it's not really that important. But I mean, sometimes they are, and sometimes they're not. It's just like, in episode 2 when they see the deserter clone. It's like, do you have to have seen the Clone Wars to get that? No, but it's a nice little like, oh yeah, he was in that one episode back.
And he was aging quite a bit.
Yeah,
and that was one of those moments where it did show a bit of aging and difference, because he would have been first. Yeah, probably the first gen. So whereas Bad Batch, I would think even just as them would be a little bit later.
Yeah,
so
I think too.
Yeah. Do you think? I was thinking about again, like this first 8 episodes, maybe it's going to be like the first season of Mandalorian, you know, is there going to be kind of like a high point, and then we think we're safe, and then it comes back in? Because I'm thinking of ways that they can create, you know, they can't be on the run the whole time. I mean, we found out with the Mandalorian that does get old after a while. It gets
old quick, yeah.
So, I mean, we were complaining about it like halfway through the first season. It's like, okay, he's on the run, but now what? You know, there's the now what factor. So I would think that at some point they're going to have to do a mission. They're going to have to do something to get money, because they can't sell, you know.
Right. Well,
they can't sell people into slavery and try that trick every
time. Yeah. Well, they have 3,000 credits right now, and I would bet, you know, because we didn't actually see them buy supply, I don't think. But, you know, they've got to do that, and I would think they at least try to hide out for one episode, you know, but something will happen to where they realize, like, oh, we have to leave now, because, like, you know, it could be one of those episodes where, like, oh, the local population doesn't want us here, we have to save them or whatever. But or it could just be something as simple as, like, oh, the Empire found us, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Like, there has to be some kind of urgency to get going.
Well, and I mean, from what they've already set up or established so far, you know, I would like to see them get to some point where they're like, okay, this is how we have to go back and save Crosshair. Because they've already established that there's a little bit of loss there with Crosshair. Like, we don't leave somebody behind, you know. So we know that's you know, there on some level. What drives them to that point, who knows? You know. So I thought they were setting up Wrecker in the last episode, like he got bonked on the head.
I meant to say that. I forgot.
Because, you know, we had guests on the show, and they were all, hey, we want to eat first.
I had that in my notes, too. And, like, you know, because they were talking so much, I just forgot to mention it. But I had wrote that somewhere. Yeah, because that's actually what I thought was going to happen. He seemed just really rubbing his head. And you're like, oh, my God, is it going to trigger his chip to where all of a sudden he turns and they're going to have to deal with him, you know?
I mean, that would be an interesting tension to kind of, like, you know, play out, because, you know, you could have them isolated alone and one of them flips, and then what do? You know, you're being hunted by I could, you know, Hunter has to be always there. I think he's our alpha that we follow, you know. So you can't get it to the point where it's just Tech and Omega against the rest of them. But I could see them whittling them away and having it just be like Hunter and, you know, I don't know. Who knows?
I mean, that could happen. I mean, I don't think that'll happen this season at all, but I could definitely see that, depending on how many seasons Filoni has planned. Because I can't see this going more like Rebels. I can't see it going past 4 seasons. I would only think it'll happen 3 seasons. I mean, I don't think it'll happen 4 seasons. It'll be less. But
they might. They might at least have a trajectory of, like, where they want the show to go, and then depending on how successful it is, whether or not they end it there and keep it, you know. But I could see them having a large tent pole, like, we can get it to this moment here, you know. I think we can see these heroes, you know, interacting with the Death Star.
Oh yeah.
Like, I mean, like them stumbling across it, coming into, you know, it's being built still, you know. They're not out there for the rebellion. It's not like they need to get this information to anybody, but you could definitely see them seeing some of these things, you know, and us witnessing that world through their eyes, you know. So, also Red Dawn being born, you know, and setting up, like, how Maul comes to power. I mean, we could see them doing, I don't know, even a mission for Red Dawn until they realize, like, you know, how much of a messed up organization it is.
Yeah, I mean, or they could just kind of become bounty hunters for a little while, or just some kind of smugglers, or, you know, something like that, where they have to embrace it just to make the money so they can live. Missions they don't want to do, but, you know,
I mean, you know, I know I've crapped on Resistance quite a bit, the cartoon.
Yeah.
There is a shift that happens from season 1 to season 2, and I really enjoyed that. They buried that lead for a really long time, and then when that reveal happened, it was like oh, okay, and it was a definite, like, game changer, so that you knew that going into season 2 it was a whole new show, really. I mean, the environment changed and the dynamic of the show changed. So I kind of look at that like just as a writer, like, okay, are they where can they go with this if they're just bounty hunters living on the road?
Yeah, I mean, I like it when they do that. I mean, it's kind of like we've talked about with Mandalorian. Now that the child is no longer with him, it's like they're at a real weird spot in the show of like, because that is, for a lot of kids anyway, that was the draw. It's like, oh, I want to see Baby Yoda, and now he's either they're going to do like what somebody mentioned last week, I think, is like, are they going to do a leap forward like 10 years or something, or are they just going to continue on with, a more Mandalorian season of like, oh, like who's going to get, Dark Saber, who's going to, like, you don't know.
Season 3 opens up Grogu wandering through the desert, and then this silhouette of a figure bends down and says, "Hello, I'm Rey."
Jeez.
I was just waiting for your face. And then you find out we're like 20 years in the future, or something. No, that's not gonna
I guess like supposedly I read an article not too long ago, maybe a week ago, about how I think they're trying to get Daisy Ridley to reprise her role for something, and it's kind of like, no, just let it go away. I don't want I mean, no, I'm sure that they're going to pressure Jon Favreau to lead Mandalorian into that period. I want it to be its own standalone thing, like every other thing in Star Wars. Like, no, I just want it to be its own thing.
Well, if they're planning in the future, they have to at least kind of have these puzzle pieces in place where it's like, okay,
but leave it to the viewer to say like, oh, this obviously is
right.
But don't directly, say like, oh, like here's the birth of the New Order, and you're like. Yeah,
I mean, there was one thing that Clone Wars did. It fleshed out the world in areas that we didn't know we wanted.
Yeah,
it was like, oh, I didn't know. I realized I wanted to know clones so much and like care about them. And it created. And now we're watching a show about clones dealing with the aftermath of war. And in some ways, I would say Bad Batch is a lot more adult than some of the other programs that we've had, because of, I mean, that moment where Crosshair goes in and like kills all of those people, like that's pretty gritty stuff. That's Order 66 level extreme, mind control, and watching, someone go really dark, but we know Star Wars is a story about redemption for all characters. So, go ahead.
Well, I was just thinking, like, talking about, it's like if we do get in the Ahsoka show, or any of these new shows that are going to come out, because I want to see the Ezra Bridger and I want to see Thrawn. If we're gonna, because that's something I like it being ambiguous in that, I would like to see, like, in order for them to survive, they had to work together, and then, but then when Thrawn and Ezra get back into the real world, they kind of, do their own thing, and like I would like to see Thrawn like, oh, now we're going to establish something, his power, but you don't have to call it, you don't have to name it. You just say like, and that, people go, oh, is that the New Order? I don't know, like, but like just. That's what I like everything to be open more than just saying like, oh yeah, I'm the one who founded this, this thing. Because to me, it's like putting a label on a relationship. It's like, let's just keep it what it is.
Right. It's kind of how I feel about some of the canon and legend stuff.
Yeah.
It's like let's play around in this gray area where both can exist together.
Yeah, like we've talked about that before, like with the Force Unleashed comic book / video game. And then the Rise of Darth Vader book, there is a certain chapter towards the end of the book and the opening of that video game that I almost like to blend the two together, in that, Vader goes to a planet to kill this last remaining Jedi that he found. And then I like to overlap it with the opening of the Force Unleashed. It's like, oh, he found that Jedi, and then he was going back to save his son, who Vader then takes as his apprentice, and then that ends up being Starkiller, which I was like, that could totally work, even though like both of those I don't even think are canon anymore. But I liked that storyline.
There is a Twitter that a Twitter that I follow.
Twitter account.
Yeah. Twitter account. Thank you. Lost of words here. Goes by Star Wars Connections at SW Continuity. So check, follow this person if you enjoy Star Wars. I love all of their tweets because they'll take like this little paragraph and they'll show it how it connects to this comic book. They'll take this one frame of this comic book and they'll show how it connects to this other thing that's in canon. It shows all of these crazy connections, and they're very strung out. It'll have video game references, and it's really cool because I think that's as Star Wars fans we've always wondered what exists beyond the movies, the cracks and the gaps, and that's where the imagination kind of has its fun. I recently on our Owen and Bruce Instagram, and I'm a little behind on it, but I've been reading the Galaxy Guide number 4. It's a Star Wars role-playing game from 1989. I've had this in my collection for a while. I've just recently I want to look at, and read some of these that I didn't get around to. They are some of the most ridiculous, the ones that I'm putting out first, are some of the most ridiculous-looking creatures you have ever seen. You're like, this would never exist in the Star Wars universe. This is just ridiculous. But I love some of the descriptions. I love the way that it goes into this really some heavy sci-fi stuff there where I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool, because the person that wrote it is writing it for the game and is fleshing it out by their thinking about the planet, the habitants of this planet, and how that creature evolved and how that creature would exist, in a societal level. And so I really kind of, it's been this weird kind of little area where I'm just like, oh, it's not canon, but it exists in the past, and it exists in the period of Star Wars where if you were a Star Wars fan in 89 or 90, you were scraping at the bottom of the barrel to get any information. You were like, there's 3 Han Solo books, there's 3 Lando books, and there's a role-playing game. That's it. Good luck, kids. It's
interesting to me, depending on what time period you grew up. Like Chris and I talked about this, but with X-Wing and TIE Fighter, those video games from LucasArts, and that's how we know so much about the inside cockpits of all the ships. Whereas a lot of people, if I say, deflector shields to double front, most people are like, I don't know what that means. But playing that video game, you totally understand what double front means. You're like, oh, and it's things like that I like about, I guess, just growing up when we grew up.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's, like I said, the stories that fill in the cracks and the gaps that, those little bits of dialogue, the things that we hang on to. But anyway, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you saw it. I did. I'm assuming you did too. They announced that Rangers of the New Republic is right now on a holding pattern.
I had seen that, and that gave me hope.
Well, I mean, of all the new things, that was the one we were kind of like, I don't know if that one's going to work. Yeah.
Yeah. Not only that, but I hated the name.
Yeah, it was a really cheesy name. Yeah.
I just don't. I didn't like the logo. I didn't like the name. I mean, if you want to do a show about Hera teaching pilots how to be pilots, but set it between A New Hope and Empire, give me that.
Well, that's where I'm disappointed with the Patty Jenkins thing, is that they're calling it Rogue Squadron, but then they haven't announced what era it's going to be in.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, well, you can't have a Rogue Squadron without Wedge, and Wedge is too old. So it's like you're just going to have a bunch of random pilots in there calling themselves Rogue Squadron. But but then if you read that from a certain point of view story, which is really good, and the Empire one, it's when Wedge takes over from Luke, because Luke goes off to Dagobah, and you're like, oh, and then that to me was one of the best stories in the book, because you have that one. I'm not sure which one comes first. You have one about a TIE fighter squadron that's full of women, which is an interesting story. And then I forget which one. Then you have the Wedge one with him recruiting new pilots. And I was like, and both of those were really great stories.
I remember reading the Wedge one. I have not. I don't know if I read the TIE fighter.
Yeah,
I'm not all the way through that book. Sometimes I buy books, I start reading them, and then I put them.
I do the same thing. Yeah, they're roughly at the same time. Like it's basically. I want to say the Wedge one does come first, but I can't recall. But the TIE fighter one it's during the asteroid sweep.
Okay, that would make sense. Yeah,
and so you see, there.
I need to dust off that book because I've been reading. Well, I should finish the book that I checked out from the library because I've been diving into that High Republic series, and there's Into the Storm book that I mentioned, I think, on the last episode, and I've been kind of picking away at that. There's 2 books that came out, and that's, I think, the most confusing thing. I know they launched this whole High Republic thing.
Oh, the High Republic, yeah.
Like, there's so much High Republic that you're like, wait, what should I be reading, and how does it all interconnect, and what's the storyline? And that can be, I think that's probably the most, as a Star Wars fan, that's just kind of like, okay, what is this? What are you trying to sell me on? There's the main book.
Yeah. That's all, and then the second one comes out this summer. But like that's the only 2 I plan on.
There's
reading.
A Claudia Gray book that is for young adult,
right?
and it kind of deals in that same time frame with some of those same people. And then there's the comic book, and some characters that exist in the book, the novel High Republic, the main one, also exist in the comic book. So you see a little bit of them,
Yeah, I mean, I tend to like things to be connected. It's kind of like we've talked about the Dawn of the Jedi. Like the book is totally separate from the comic book series.
Yeah.
So it's like, you don't have to read it. You can if you want, but
I think that's kind of what they're doing with it. Like the characters are there, but there's no, you don't have to read one to read the other. You can just jump in. So I'm excited that there's a second book coming out in the main storyline because I'm kind of more. I'm almost done with the first book. That's been my audio book, and so it's usually when I'm around the house working on stuff. And so anyway, that's my Star Wars for the week, I guess. We finished our Galactic Order rewatch. I know you and I have talked about this. My kids and I, we started off from The Phantom Menace all the way to Rise of Skywalker. We watched every movie, every TV show, every scrap of visual information. We skipped a few things, like we didn't watch the entire holiday special because we already watched it in November. I was not subjecting them to it again. I was like, that's child abuse. So
I mean, that's understandable if you skip that one. Yeah.
Well, and that's why I'm a little bit more familiar with Resistance, because I just went through and rewatched it. I enjoyed more of the second season. And the one thing about Rise of Skywalker, as I've continued to watch that, and again, we've talked about this movie. I really love C-3PO.
Yeah.
And his parts throughout the movie are hilarious.
That's what was funny to me is that, because I hated
Last Jedi doesn't deal. Last Jedi doesn't deal with the droids at all, and Force Awakens completely ignores,
right. And to me,
both
exactly. But either one, because I hated the Force Awakens because to me it was just a recopy of A New Hope.
Right.
It offered nothing new to me in plot wise, so that's why I didn't care for it. Last Jedi just took everything, went, I'm throwing it out, and then it was just so weird and hodgepodge and an act that didn't belong there. And so when we got to Rise of Skywalker, which I've said before, the first bit of that movie I actually liked. Because exactly what you're saying is that it brought it back to the droids, and you have so many C-3PO lines that are believable, and you're like, Yeah, that's C-3PO. Like him, just kind of like I said before, like when they go through like the quicksand-ish type stuff, and they're all like checking each other, and he's like, "I'm perfectly fine." like that's because like no one cares,
Right. And then Finn arrives, and he's like, "Oh, he's still saying that he's okay," and it's so good. How he's used the comedic timing for it, and the pacing, the fact that we get them on an adventure together. That's all we wanted.
Yeah.
Is that those people together. I realized that Empire divided up the story. The Empire Strikes Back had done that where they broke up the main story core, but really you want them all together on an adventure.
Well, that's what makes the Empire neat, is that because you have one unit in the first movie, and then they have, like all people do, you have your own little things. But then when they come back together, you're like, oh, it's on, And
so anyway, rewatching that, I'm a little bit more like, and I guess I still hold out hope that there's going to be. I don't even need another trilogy. I just need an episode 10 that sets everything right. Like that just sets it, just an episode 10 that's just like, and there you go. Like there you go. I will say the other thing that I noticed about Rise of Skywalker this time through, we assume that is a sunset at the end, and I haven't read into this, so email it.
You thinking it's a dawn?
No, it is. Like I totally think that this is the rise, like it's a sunrise, and it would make sense because of the name of the movie, and because when she arrives there at the very beginning, it's actually kind of like that blue sky, like early morning light. It doesn't feel like sunset. Like sunset has golden hour. Morning light has that blue kind of feel to it, and so that was one thing I noticed. Rewatching it. Whether or not the script or the book says otherwise, I don't know. I think it's a missed opportunity that we didn't see Vader's castle. We were rumored Vader's castle for so long. You set it up in Rogue One. Payoff that we know that's Mustafar at the beginning of Rise of Skywalker. That's all we need. I just the lava volcano in the background. That's all we needed. So anyway, I don't want to get into a big, huge notes on Rise of Skywalker because we'll be here for another hour.
Yeah, there's so many like things like just the nitpicky part of me. Like exactly, I wanted that as well. Like it would have been a lot cooler than some freaking Sith planet.
No, well, you mean the final battle being on
or just something. I just thought it was weird. But to me, like I was in agreement with a lot of people who really did not like her calling herself a Skywalker at the end of the movie, because it's the same as like when in A New Hope, when Luke is just devastated that Ben is dead, over on the chessboard, and Leia's over going like, it's okay, and she's like, I just saw my whole planet explode with everyone I've ever known on it, and you're crying about an old man you knew for like 2 hours. Like that's and it's the same thing. It's like, you didn't even know Luke. He showed up, he treated you like crap, and then he died, and you're like, I'm a Skywalker. Like it just like
She was always searching for parents.
Yeah, but she had more screen time and connection with Han than she did with Luke, probably.
I would say, okay. One other, and again, complained and bitched about this, but they needed to let their writers free to give us stories that existed between two of the movies. That's all we needed. Two of the movies. Because we had that with A New Hope to Empire. We had this vast span of time where all of our star heroes can do all of their star cool things, right? They missed out on the opportunity to have 3 years in between Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker, and you show us. I don't care if it's animated with different actors. I don't care. But show Leia being a Jedi, training Rey, and then all is said and done. You can tell so much more in that little gap. But instead, you get this throwaway. Anyway, I'm going to get down a dark path here, Nick.
Yeah. Did you see it?
C-3PO. That's all I wanted to say.
Yeah, it's true. There's two memes. The first one just goes back to the holiday special, which I thought was funny. I'm sure if you might have seen it or not, where it's like Just remember that the CGI Mandalorian Luke Skywalker is still more believable than the holiday special Luke Skywalker.
That's perfect.
And then the other one was about R2. It was like, R2 is old as F. It's like he never had his mind erased, but he still knew to keep his lips shut. he knew everything, all the way even to the sequel trilogy. He shut himself down because he did not want to give away anything for his boy Luke. I was like,
that's good.
Yeah, like
I haven't seen that one. Well, before we overstay our welcome, because we've only provided you with stolen fruit, probably some Melu runs. You can shish kebab them up at home or eat them raw on the streets. Did you have any other thing that you wanted to say about this episode? I mean,
not the episode. I think we covered. I mean, I had just talking points, but we covered everything that was really worth talking about. Because it was a short episode. It was only like 20 something, like 24 or 25 minutes. It was a short episode compared to the other ones. But yeah, I mean, other than just from fruit for thought of just her age and things like that, that was really that's all it was like the speeder bike chase and Fennec and
the mystery of Fennec. Who's she working for? Is she working for the Hutts? She could be working for the Hutts. But how would they know? How would they know about Omega? Like
exactly.
Like who would want Omega? The Empire doesn't seem to care, or is it the Emperor?
It's saying like that's what I think it is. It's most likely what you're saying. It's most likely the Kaminoans. It's most likely, and that would be the Kaminoan. Yeah, that would be number one. That's the number one seed, I think.
Yeah.
Emperor and Boba Fett. I'd say Emperor's 2 seed, and then 3 seed is Boba Fett. Like a subcontract kind of thing out there, like because he is the son of Jango. Makes sense. Like like you will contact this kid. Which then it would still be the Kamino. Them.
It would be. Here's another interesting way that they could bring in Boba Fett is what if Fennec has captured Boba Fett as well as like she's not working for Boba Fett, but she's working for the Kaminoans to bring in one of these. They need DNA because Boba Fett's got DNA that would be like Jango. So
he's just pure,
so
unaltered.
So I mean, it would be an interesting way to bring in a young Boba Fett and seeing maybe a little bit of that origin with Fennec, because I don't know how. I mean, they've mentioned or alluded to the fact that the book of Boba Fett can go back in time, or we might get some, but we don't know. We don't know that for sure. Yeah. So if they're going to do flashbacks.
Be interesting. Be here before you know it.
This was a great show.
Yeah, we went longer than I thought we would.
We did, yeah. But you and I mean, we started talking Star Wars, and then you got me all riled up about Rise of Skywalker. I just wanted to say, it grows on me with time, and it is one of my daughter's favorites.
That's what I mean. I get the hate. Why people hate all three, like as in like little. Because there's things that are rewarding about all three, and there's things that are just irking about all three. Because like I said, I actually enjoyed the first half of Rise of Skywalker. I mean, the two MacGuffins really irked me. Of like, you got this dagger, and without the dagger, and it's a Sith artifact, yet somehow it has engravings of how the Death Star wreckage is there on the planet. It makes no sense whatsoever.
So this is how I understood it watching it this time through. The engravings are actually coordinates, correct? We think coordinates in space. It could also be coordinates on that planet. It could be like a coordinate on that planet. So you have to stand there with it.
Yeah, no.
It would match that.
I get that.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is that at this point in time, the only Sith that we know of is the Emperor.
Right.
So you're saying, from a logical point of view, that the Emperor made this dagger because he forgot where it was, or we're going to forget where the wreckage was. Well, and then it got, it makes no logical sense.
So Uchi was, that was his name, Uchi, right? And it's interesting because in the Darth Vader comic currently, they've set up the Uchi of Bastoon, and I wonder if it's the same because this person's working for the Emperor. Uchi is like, and this is taking place in the kind of, I think it's Empire era. So they're already kind of establishing this Uchi character, at least in the comics right now, currently. So you have this person that's working for the Emperor. The Emperor's always got these like thugs or these other like aristocrats around him.
Right.
So perhaps this religious zealot knows where the Death Star crashed, forged a dagger to run off into the desert where Lando Calrissian is still searching for it.
Yeah.
And living in a moving... Why did you have to ruin it? Okay, like I was all the way there where I enjoyed it.
I don't know. And then, of course, the second. I didn't like the second half because I just never thought the Emperor should have come back. It should have been Darth Plagueis or someone else. And then, like the fact that you have a Sith planet with all these Sith people, when you
Sith
know this,
ghosts. Like Sith ghosts, I think.
You think those are supposed to be ghosts?
Yeah. I always thought that they were like Sith ghosts. Like they needed the Emperor to come back to life so that he would grant them. Life, because that's why they're just shrouded in mystery. We don't see them; they're not fully corporate.
It's another thing that should have been explained better. Then but because to me it made no sense. It's because the Sith as a race is extinct. So it's so who are these other people if they're not Force users? And then he should have explained that. Well, these are all just the living. Well, then, but they've all. Lucas has often said that the Sith cannot be Force ghosts. So it's like, well, then how are these people here?
Maybe it's a graveyard of the Sith. That's where the Sith retire. Anyway,
for anyone out there, we're sorry that we just crapped on it for a while, but if you're listening to us, you know it's kind of what I do.
My daughter, so Rise of Skywalker is, I think, her favorite because of Rey. Everything is great for Rey in that movie. If you watch Last Jedi, there's a lot of Rey in it, but it doesn't go great for her, right? It's kind of like she lifts rocks, but she doesn't really do much in the way of she has that big battle with Snoke, but she gets kind of beat up on, and it's it doesn't go her way is all I'm saying. And it's a little bit more melodramatic, and there's got a little bit more of that
she got out of it without losing an appendage. So I mean.
She did. She. If you can walk away from a Sith fight without losing an appendage, I guess that's
very good. Yeah, she should at least lost a finger. I mean, come on, everybody loses something.
I'm just saying, as far as if you look at the 3 sequel movies and you're just looking at the character of Rey from a 14-year-old girl perspective, that one would be the best one because Rey does everything she needs to do and she walks away a BA. So you don't have to understand any of the plot points, Nick. You're a 14-year-old girl.
Hey, give her a little credit.
No. My daughter is very, very smart and very thoughtful person. Okay, I'm just saying that plot doesn't matter to her. She's just in it for the character and what happens with the character. Think of it as a Lost fan. You're not in it for the plot. You're in it for the character.
I'm in it for the plot.
Okay.
I'm always in it for the plot.
Before I lose any more of us, send us an email at theforceswelldone@gmail.com. Go over to jandjack.com, click on the patron link, become a patron member, help us out in any way that you can. Rate and review the show. That is a great way that you can also help out Owen and Bruce. We would appreciate that. Follow us on Instagram when I post every 3 to 20 weeks. Who knows when? I'd like to thank some patrons that make this show possible. It's the TAC Batch. I have nothing else but love for the TAC Batch. And I think that from going forward, there is no other words I can put together when doing the Bad Batch rewatch here, or not rewatch, but watch, is that Echo Eckhart and Wrecker Richter just flow. They're
great. Yeah.
I can't not think of those. Now, Delivery Droid Ed is special only for this episode. Dress yourself up like a droid, Ed. Maggie Moynihan, I want to come to your wedding, Maggie Moynihan. So, because Bobby Moynihan was in it.
No, I got it.
Okay, yeah, I know. But best of all, jumping from Speeder's Joanne and good old Greg. If you missed him, he was a goat. So, Watch it here. It's like he was the
Gordo. Oh,
good old Greg. Whew. I'm glad Chris isn't here because he would just crap on the names.
No, not him. Never. All right. Well, thanks for joining, everybody. We'll see you.
Free show, kids.
Yeah.
1 in a million.